Hello students, I am Dr. Sambhu Kumar, Assistant Professor, GMC Vidya. In previous class we have discussed about the diabetes mellitus and there are so many characteristic features of the diabetes mellitus. In previous class we have discussed about the introduction, the clinical features, the classification and insulin. And now today we will discuss about the oral hypoglycemic treatment of diabetes mellitus. Unfortunately, we have already discussed that many people are completely unaware of their disease and they are diagnosed in OPD procedures. Here, now we'll discuss about the oral hypoglycemics. There are so many classes and classifications of oral hypoglycemic drugs, like the bigonides. Here we see that in bigonides, metformin is a very important drug, and it was discovered in 1950s, and now it is the most widely used oral anti-diabetic agent. Actually, the exact mode of action of metformin is not completely known, but the metabolic actions of metformin are the anorexogenic effect, that is, it reduces appetite, decreases intestinal absorption of glucose, decreases hepatic gluconeogenesis, increases number of insulin receptors, increases GLUT4 transporters, and has favorable effects on fibrinolysis and platelet aggregation, as well as it also decreases triglyceride synthesis in liver. Recently, it has been shown that metformin inhibits the mitochondrial isoform of the enzyme glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate dehydrogenase, which leads to alteration in the ratio of NADH to NAD and lactate to pyruvate in the hepatocytes. Now, we start the therapy of metformin at 500 mg per day, and the dose can be up titrated to 2500 mg per day. Metformin is absorbed from small intestine, the oral bioavailability being 50 to 60%, and the half-life is 4 to 6 hours, and duration of action is 8 to 12 hours. It is excreted unchanged by the kidney by glomerular filtration and tubular secretion. Metformin is an ideal first-line drug of most of the cases of type 2 diabetes mellitus. It does not stimulate insulin release and hence does not cause hypoglycemia when used as monotherapy, although it can potentiate the hypoglycemic effects of other anti-diabetic agents. In some cases of polycystic ovary syndrome, these are also used. The side effects of metformin are mainly gastrointestinal. It includes nausea, diarrhea, abdominal discomfort, and vitamin B12 malabsorption. The side effect can be minimized by the use of extended release formulation. Sometimes lactic acidosis is also claimed the side effects of metformin, but this is extremely rare. There are also some contraindications associated with metformin are renal failure. If the estimated glomerular filtration rate, that is EGFR, is less than 30, it should not be used in that patient. It is contraindicated in hepatic failure, respiratory failure, and severe cardiac failure also. It should not be given to the individuals undergoing radiographic contrast procedures. So these are some contraindications. The one very important thing that metformin does not generally cause hypoglycemia, and it should be preferably used in obese patients. So these all are in short about the metformin. Now we will discuss about the insulin secretagogue, that is sulfonylureas. As we are already seeing here that sulfonylureas contains glibenclamide, glipizide, gliclazide, and glimepiride. Each and every drug or sulfonylurease has its their own beauty and drawbacks. So, first of all, here see that glibenclamide. Glibenclamide is although very important drug, but it generally causes hypoglycemia. So these are not generally used, although it is the most potent and important drug. Sulfonylureas are absorbed after oral administration. They are metabolized in liver and excreted in urine or bile. They have to be administered 30 minutes before meal. Now, the main side effect of sulfonylurea is hypoglycemia. This can be quite severe and prolonged, especially if the causative agent is glibenclamide. Second one is the weight gain. It is another recognized side effect. Individuals with hepatic and renal dysfunction are more developed to sulfonylurea induced hypoglycemia, so it should not be used in the patient of hepatic and renal dysfunction. Sometimes it may also cause some allergic reaction and that can lead to Stevens-Johnson syndrome. Some gastrointestinal side effects are also there. Now, sulfonylureas are also contraindicated in pregnancy and in type 1 diabetes. It should be avoided in patients with hepatic and renal insufficiency. But the glipizide and gliclazide, these are the safe drug that can be used in renal insufficiency. Now we will discuss about the insulin secretagogues, that is meglitinides. These are prandial glucose regulators. Repaglinide is a benzoic acid derivative, while nataglinide is derived from phenylalanine. They are fast, short-acting, and potent insulin secretagogues. They potentiate glucose-dependent insulin secretion. They allow meal-related dosing. Therefore, the patient does not become slave to the treatment. They bind to sulfonylurea receptors on beta cell membrane at a site distinct from sulfonylurea receptors and cause closure of potassium channels. Depolarization occurs leading to insulin release. They are rapidly absorbed and peak levels are reached within 1 hour. Insulin response peak within 30 to 45 minutes. They are metabolized in liver by cytochrome P450 and excreted via bile and urine. The dose, the repaglinide is 0.5 to 4 mg 3 times a day, while nataglinide is given at a dose of 60 to 180 mg thrice a day. Nowadays, meglitinides is restricted to individuals who require secretagogues but who are not candidate for sulfonylureas on account of age or other comorbidities. Unfortunately, they are not very potent and are also expensive. They should not be used in pregnancy and hepatic insufficiency. After that, we will discuss about the very important drug that is called glitazones, or comes under the classification thiazolidinediones. These are the most important class of anti-diabetic medications to be used. They are mainly used as insulin resistant drug. Here, thiazolidinediones activate a nuclear receptor called peroxisome proliferator activator receptor. They cause expression of specific genes present in adipose tissue and muscle, which encodes for lipoprotein lipase, fatty acid transporter proteins, fatty acid coenzyme synthetase, and glucose. They increase gluconeogenesis, increase in lipogenesis in adipose tissue, and decrease gluconeogenesis in the liver. They also decrease triglyceride production. They also increase tyrosine kinase activity of insulin receptor and thus increase insulin sensitivity and activity. After that, its metabolism. We see the pioglitazone is well absorbed from gut and metabolized by liver cytochrome P450 system. It is excreted by the kidney. The dose of pioglitazone is 7.5 to 45 milligram per day as a single dose. It is slow acting drug. The action starts only after 2 to 4 weeks of starting therapy and peaks after 8 to 12 weeks. Pioglitazone can be used as monotherapy or in combination with sulfonylurea or metformin. They are usually not combined with insulin for fear of producing excess weight gain. And it is particular benefit in insulin resistant states. Pioglitazone is also found to decrease blood pressure. It corrects lipids, improves fibrinolysis and decreases atherosclerosis. Now we discuss about the side effect. The main side effect of thiazolidone therapy is weight gain, and it causes fluid retention and accumulation of fat. Another side effect is pedal edema, facial puffiness, and even dyspnea and orthopnea also occurs. Almost all studies shown that it causes congestive heart failure, so it should not be in case of patient with heart failure and renal failure. Other side effects of thiazolidine includes dilutional anemia, stimulation of ovulation, and alteration of liver enzymes. Now we see pioglitazone, although is very important drug, but it is contraindicated in pregnancy, anemia, and renal failure. Sometimes it is also claimed that pioglitazone causes bladder cancer, so it should not be used in a patient with history of bladder cancer or prone to develop the bladder cancer. Now we discuss about the another group, that is alpha glucosidase inhibitors. Here see acarbose, miglitol and voglibose. These are the alpha glucosidase inhibitor drugs. Now the mechanism of action. These drugs reversibly inhibit alpha glucosidase enzyme in the brush border of the small intestine. Thereby, it hampers the digestion of oligosaccharides and disaccharides and delaying the absorption of carbohydrates. Therefore, the digestion takes place throughout the small intestine rather than in the jejunum alone. But they do not affect the absorption of monosaccharide. Now, about the acarbose, it is the first agent in this group and it is a complex oligosaccharides. It is given at a dose of 25 to 150 milligram per day in 3 divided doses along with the first bite of food. Less than 2% of ingested acarbose is absorbed. Acarbose can be used as monotherapy in individuals with isolated postprandial hyperglycemia. Now the side effects. The side effects are generally gastrointestinal and it may include flatulence, belching, indigestion, diarrhea and cramps. A rare complication is anemia and it is mainly due to the malabsorption. Acarbose is contraindicated in gastrointestinal disorders like inflammatory bowel disorders, intestinal obstruction, malabsorption syndrome and cirrhosis of liver. Now come to the miglitol. Its clinical efficacy is similar to acarbose and it has less flatulence and less elevation of liver enzymes. But the incidence of diarrhea is far more. The dosage is similar to that of acarbose. Now we discuss about the voglibose. It is the latest alpha glucosidase inhibitors. Everything is displayed on the board. It is claimed to be more specific compared to acarbose for sucrose and maltose enzymes and have a lower incidence of side effects. The dose is 0.2 to 0.3 milligram along with the first bite of food. Now we discuss about the very important term, that is dipeptidyl peptidase 4 inhibitor, that is also called DPP4 inhibitors. These are also called gliptins. Here we see DPP4 inhibitors like sitagliptin, vildagliptin, saxagliptin, linagliptin, telegliptin, and gemagliptins. Although there are 17 and more than 17 gliptins nowadays, but in India we generally use 6 types of DPP4 inhibitors. These agents potentiate the action of endogenous GLP-1, that is glucagon-like peptide 1, and GIP by inhibiting the enzyme responsible for their degradation, that is DPP4. They can reduce HbA1c by around 0.5 to 1%. Like GLP-1, DPP4 promote glucose-dependent insulin secretion and are hence unlikely to cause hypoglycemia when used as monotherapy or in combination with agents other than insulin or sulfonylureas. They do not cause weight loss but are weight neutral. Their main advantage is that they can be administered orally. These agents are well tolerated and no serious adverse effect. But a case of GLP-1RA, a few cases of acute pancreatitis have been reported, but these are very rare. Now we discuss about the SGLT2 inhibitors. In SGLT2 inhibitors, we see the canagliflozin, dapagliflozin, and empagliflozin. These are the very novel class of oral anti-diabetic agents that have a unique insulin-independent mode of action. The molecular target of these agents is the sodium glucose 4-transport isoform 2, that is SGL2, which is primarily located on the luminal surface of the proximal convoluted tubule of the nephron. Inhibition of this transporter leads to loss of glucose in the urine and consequent reduction in the plasma glucose level. These agents reduces HbA1c to 0.7 to 1%. When compared to placebo, these drugs do not potentiate the secretion of insulin. They are not associated with significant risk of hypoglycemia. Loss of calories in the form of glucose in the urine can also help in weight loss. Canagliflozin, dapagliflozin, and empagliflozin, these are especially available in India now. These are generally well tolerated. There is an increased incidence of genital mycotic infection, and this is the very common side effect, so that it can cause urinary tract infection, especially in the women. The reversible increase in serum creatinine is also claimed, and it also increase in LDL cholesterol level. But the empagliflozin has very beneficial effects on the cardiovascular outcomes. So, the very important group that is incretin mimetics. This contains ethanoids, liraglutide, and dulaglutides. Glucagon-like peptide 1 and glucose-dependent insulinotropic peptide are peptide hormones. They are released from the gastrointestinal tract in response to food intake. These incretin hormones enhance insulin secretion in a glucose-dependent manner. Apart from insulinotropic effect on beta cells, GLP-1 suppresses glucagon release from alpha cells and delays gastric emptying, decreases appetite, and induces satiety after food intake. These agents act at a GLP-1 receptor at multiple sites in the body and mimic the action of endogenous GLP-1. Thereby, they cause glucose-dependent insulin secretion, suppression of glucagon secretion, slowing of gastric emptying, and So it is very important in the treatment of obese individual with type 2 diabetes mellitus. Here we see the adverse effect. The adverse effect is usually related to the gastrointestinal symptoms, and it include nausea, vomiting, loss of appetite, and bloating. Sometimes acute pancreatitis are also claimed. It's as adverse effect, but it is rare. So we see that all the oral hypoglycemic drug has their own beauty, and they are very effective for the control of blood sugar level. One thing that we want to discuss, that the our treatment objective for type 2 diabetes mellitus is the correction of acute metabolic abnormalities, ensuring long-term maintenance of glycemic control to prevent chronic complications, identification and treatment of comorbidities, and educating the patient regarding the disease and maintaining a high level of motivation. As well as there are so many risk factors that are also associated with the diabetes mellitus, and with the treatment of diabetes we should also control the risk factors that are associated with diabetes, that are hypertension, hyperlipidemia, smoking, and physical inactivity. These all things are very important, and all the parameters are required for the control of diabetes mellitus. So in this class we discussed about the diabetes mellitus, the different classes of drugs. In short, all the things are already displayed here, that the biguanides, in the metformin, its daily dose is 500 to 2500 milligram. Its HbA1c reduction is 1 to 2%. Is used in renal insufficiency, it should not be used, and the chances of hypoglycemia is very less. Similarly, in sulfonylurea, we have seen that all the drugs have their own beauty, and the HbA1c reduction is 1 to 2, and hypoglycemia is very common with the sulfonylureas, and the effect on the weight is also very important. It causes weight gain. Similarly, we see the repaglinides and nataglinides, they have the HbA1c reduction is 0.5 to 1, and they should be used. They can be used in renal insufficiency. The chances of hypoglycemia is very, very probable, and the effect on the weight is it causes weight gain. Similarly, we see the glitazones, the pioglitazone, the dose is 7.5 to 45. The HbA1c reduction is 1 to 1.5, and it should not be used in case of renal insufficiency, as we have discussed earlier. Its chances of hypoglycemia plus and minus, and it causes weight gain. Similarly, alpha glucosidase inhibitor, we have seen that it inhibits the conversion of disaccharides to monosaccharides, and the use in renal insufficiency is not very clear, and hypoglycemia is plus and minus, and its effect on the weight gain is neutral. Similarly, we see in creatine that we see that the other all the incretins have their own beauty and drawbacks, and they are used in different doses. The HbA1c reduction is 1 to 1.5, and the use in renal insufficiency is not very clear, and effect is it causes less weight gain. Similarly, we see that for inhibitors, that's sitagliptin, vildagliptin, sasagliptin, linagliptin, telegliptins, and gemagliptins. All gliptins have their own beauty, and linagliptin is a very important drug that should be especially used in renal insufficiency patient. Similarly, we studied about the SGLT2 inhibitors. So it is all about the oral hypoglycemic drugs. In other classes, we will discuss some other aspects of diabetes mellitus. Thank you.